2020. At this time, I ask you to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The same one that screams?
At this time, I'm going to take attendance. Ms. Melanie Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Tommy Clay is out. Mr. Kreisman.
Here.
Mr. Fadley. Harry.
Here.
Carl Leonard.
Here.
And myself. Okay.
2, 3, 4.
Moving on to item agenda number 2, election of officers.
Mr. Chairman, it is once again time for the election of the officers of the OUA Board, all 3 positions being the chairperson, vice chairperson, and second vice chairperson. All current members holding those positions are available for 1 more year if the board were to so accept them in that position.
So, John, just clarify, we vote for a chair first, then he takes over the election?
The process is I will handle the election for the chairperson, and then whomever is elected would then take over the meeting from that point forward. So if there aren't any other questions, I will open it up for nominations for chairperson.
Nominate Steve Nelson.
I second.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I will now turn the meeting over to Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, we are to elect a vice chairperson. Do I have a nomination for vice chair?
Nominate John Creasman.
I have a motion to elect and maintain Mr. John Kreisman.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Carl Leonard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Second vice chairperson is up for re-election. Do I have a nominee?
Nominate Melanie Anderson.
I have a nomination for Ms. Anderson.
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to item agenda number 3.
Mr. Chairman, Chairperson and board members, there is a public hearing, and you need to open the meeting for this public hearing on the rate scheduling adjustments.
At this time, we open up the hearing, this public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing.
I have a motion. I have a second by Mr. Leonard. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Board members, you have in your board package a proposed rate schedule increase of 2% as presented by PRMG at one of our previous meetings, showing that we have in the last few years allowed our resources to be used to balance the budget. And of course, looking forward at the Southwest expansion and the continued growth of the system, they had proposed a 2% mid-year adjustment to the rate schedule. And that's what you would find in your board package, a rate schedule showing the existing rates in black and the proposed rates, what they would go to at 2%. And I would leave it open for any kind of questions at this time.
questions from the board?
But you got to do the public first.
At this time, is anybody in the audience from the public who'd like to come up and speak? Yes, ma'am. Please step forward. Please give us your name.
Colleen Izzo.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm here. I'd like to veto the bill. I think that we pay enough for the water and sewer for Okeechobee. Maybe this isn't the time or the place for me to say this, but last year I was out of town, not this year, but last year, and I had my brother shut my water off at the meter outside. And when I got back home in August, I got a bill for $370. And my water was off, and there was nobody in my house. And I had to pay it. There was nobody over the water department. I called everybody. I called the governor, the president up north, everyone that I know to call. And he said that the Okeechobee water was an amenity in its own right, and that there is nobody that governs the water here. And so I seen where that you want to do an increase, and for people living on a fixed income that move here, which I do, I think we pay enough. We're one of the highest rates for water anywhere that I know of.
Did you turn the water off yourself, or did you ask the
I
OUA?
had my brother turn it off. We have a,
But you did not ask the OUA to turn it off?
no, I did not. I didn't know you could, because a long time ago I asked them and they said you have to pay the water and sewer every month. You know, that's, so I never thought about asking them.
Okay. John, do you want to?
And they came out immediately before I got home from the OUA back to 33rd Street. They were over there and took my water meter out. And they said that water meters never malfunction in your favor, that it would be the other way. And if I wanted to pay $50, I could have a water meter tested. Well, how do I know? My water meter was already out. How do I know what they're testing? So, you know, I went to everybody, and they said if I said that my son was there and washed his truck, that they would reduce the bill and say that it didn't go through the sewer, which I did lie and say that, because it was like $150-some. But there was no one at my house. I've had my toilets checked. I've had my water lines checked. I have had no leaks, no problems.
John?
And I didn't know that you could come up here and say anything. I called the commissioners or whoever that we have, and like now, when I'm not in the house, my water is, I turn it off outside, because I can't afford those bills. We get no gallons with the water that we pay, which I didn't know. I thought we had so many gallons, but the girl said that every gallon that you use, you pay for. And I'm not the only one that got a water bill like that. There was 3 other people but I don't know anything about them. I only know about myself.
Yes, ma'am.
And I live alone. There's nobody but me in the house.
Okay. We are on the topic of rate increase,
Right.
not this, so she's not in favor.
What is your normal water bill?
Around $47, $49. And I've been living here since '03. And my highest water bill that I ever got for all those years was $95 when I washed my dock and washed the outside of the house.
You have water and sewer?
I do. I live on 33rd Street.
Well, let me make this suggestion, if I may, ma'am.
Okay.
Right now, this is about first off, this is still America, and you're entitled to free speech, and you're entitled to express yourself like you have done this morning. Let me make a suggestion, because this meeting right now is about the rate increase, all right?
Okay. I
That-
vetoed that
yes.
we,
Okay, but let me finish, if I may, please, ma'am.
okay.
If you would, I'll have our director, Mr. Hayford, get with you to discuss your matter, all right? With regard to the rate increase, your opinion is noted that you are against the rate increase, and we'll take that under advisement, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to express themselves with regard to the rate increase? Okay. There is not. At this time, close it.
Comments from the board?
Sorry.
Comments from the board?
Any board member have a comment with regard to the rate increase?
Close the public hearing.
This time, need a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close?
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Approve the resolution?
Now it's time for discussion. You,
At this time, in discussion of the resolution 2002.
you might say how long it's been since there's been a rate increase.
Been quite a few years since we've had a rate increase.
I believe it was 2010. John,
I
does that
believe,
sound right?
I think it's right, correct.
I believe
2010.
it was 2010 since the last rate increase. And cost of,
George saying there has been one since 2010 sometime.
Okay.
Maybe it was in 2005 or '06, but there has been one since
Right.
2010.
I was thinking 5 years.
well, unfortunately, the cost of business keeps going up. And we have beat this to death at a board level. We are dipping into reserves every year to try to make ends meet where we can keep the ratepayers at a level where we're not paying too much. We know it's a hardship out there, and water and sewer is a burden. 2% is not a lot of money. I just figured it up on mine. My water bill, it's going to increase my bill 56 cents a month. And what was yours, Melanie?
84.
84 cents a month. So we as a board hate the term rate increase. We really do. That's why we've kept it down for as long as we have. But unfortunately, the time has come. We have to address it to keep up with the cost of doing business. So
And by doing it this way, it's not such an impact. The first time we did it, we went 5 years, Steve?
About approximately 5 years.
When, from the time that the OUA started in 1995. And we had, I think it was 5% or 6% at that time.
6%, it was a real big hit. Nobody wants to see an increase. We
So-
all, every board member here pays the bill just like everybody else. There are some of us, like myself, who have businesses that I own, that I pay as well. Do I like it? No, but unfortunately, it is what it is. It could be far worse than 2%. But this board does take into consideration that we have a very large population that is on a very strict fixed income, and we try to make it as easy as we possibly can. As compared to other entities like West Palm Beach that will get a 5 or 6 every 2 or 3 years, our rate increases have been substantially less.
Any other comment? Being no other comment, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 20-02.
I'll second it.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor? Yes?
If you would, let me just read it by title.
By title
Sure.
only.
Sorry, you can read it by title only. This is Resolution 20-02, a resolution of the Okeechobee Utility Authority, Okeechobee, Florida, adopting the schedule of rates, fees, and charges for the remainder of fiscal year 2019-20 and thereafter, providing for filing a copy with the authority clerk, providing an effective date.
So read. This
You-
time?
You might add for clarification, that is the 2% rate increase.
Yes, sir.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item agenda number 4, the acceptance of our meeting minutes from our February 10th meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Any corrections?
Motion to accept.
One correction whenever you get to.
Well, once we get under discussion, I'll bring it up.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just on the attendance, there was one person not here that is not showing up, just for record purposes. I mentioned it, Christie, she's on top of it. Mr. Clay was absent last meeting.
Okay, we have a correction on the attendance. All those in favor?
I had another item
go ahead.
on item 13, the BB&T refinance. I wondered if we should clarify that we approved the 5-year, 10-year refinance because there were two options presented during that discussion. Just, it says motion by Melanie Anderson to accept the new offer. Well, there were two offers. It doesn't specify which offer we move to accept.
For clarification, it was a 5 and 10 year.
Correct.
2020A, 5-year, 2020B, 10-year. There is another correction too. I think George has it.
Yeah, at the end of that, or during that discussion, we also approved the engagement letter with council. That's not in the minutes.
We'll add both of those as amended.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, at this time, all those in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item agenda number 5, which is our consent agenda.
Motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
I have a motion to accept by Mr. Creasman.
Second.
I have a second.
Who's the second? There are
Mr.
two of them.
Leonard.
Both of us.
Who wants it?
You can take it.
Carl Leonard is second.
Yes. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item agenda number 13.
Mr. Chairman, Chairperson, and board members, we have a customer here who has purchased a house in 2017 with the understanding that the residential connections were for both water and sewer. Recently, they had a sewer backup, and OUA staff made a site visit and determined that the problem was with her septic tank and drain field and that they were not connected to the OUA system as the records indicated. Per the current OUA rate schedule, OUA staff are allowed to make adjustments to bills for up to 3 months. And this was obviously a lot longer than 3 months since she bought the house in 2017. There has been some precedence set for this authority, this system, in that a previous time the board did allow for correction of the volumetric charges back to the incident as per a resolution that was passed a number of years ago that allows for base billing for those charges, base billing charges for those residences that have not connected to available sewer. So that being said, if we were to credit the volumetric charges back to August of 2017, that would result in a refund of $314.52. Mrs. Holbert is here this morning. She has requested a total, well, she can get into it, but what she had conveyed to staff was a total refund of all sanitary sewer charges back to 2017. So if she would like to speak, she's more than welcome to come forward, or if you have questions for her, she may be able to answer them.
Ms. Holbert, please step up to the podium.
Morning.
Morning. Good morning.
First of all, I'm another of your senior citizens. I rolled over 70 in August, so I'm also on a fixed income. And to speak to the sewer backup, that didn't happen. I did not know I had a septic. I assumed that when OUA billed me for sewer and water, that was the case. I had some trees removed and discovered there was a septic there that was hooked up to the house. So there was never a septic or sewer lines put in. It was never connected. I didn't know it when I bought the property. It was an abandoned warehouse there just down from Domer's and had a lot of issues. But I assume that since I've been paying sewer and water for 2.5 years, that I had city sewer. So I always want to pay for what I owe for. I really don't see paying for what I don't owe for. And I have not had sewer. I've had water. And I've had some bills that were $100 because I was watering the aquifer, trying to keep plants alive. But, and I don't quibble about that, but I do have concerns about paying for something that I haven't used.
Sewer is available, right?
It is.
The sewer service is there. You're
Right.
just not hooked to it.
And I didn't know that it wasn't hooked. I never dug up my property, other than I had some trees removed, and when they did, and there was a lot of them, there were 21 trees cut and or trimmed and 3 cut down. And through the process of that expensive proposition,
Okay.
I found a septic. And it was hooked to the house probably sometime in the 60s, is my best guess. The owner was in a nursing home. Her son was POA on the closing.
This is the second time this has come before the board on another situation very similar to this. And we agreed to refund the cost of the water usage in the sewer. The base charge was still there by policy. Because if it's available and you don't hook up to it, you're going to pay the base charge. What's the correct terminology, John? Help me with that. The base sewage charge, what do we call it?
Sorry, there are 2 charges on the wastewater side, the base facility charge and then the volumetric charge for the sewer. And that what we had done back in, I think it was 2016, was we did choose to refund the volumetric charges back to the time of the incident. So in this case, it would be going back to 2017, that we would refund the volumetric charges because the wastewater didn't enter our system. We didn't have to treat it. but the base charge is something that we do for all customers that have sewer available and have water service, that we do charge the base charge as if they were connected to the system.
If you were a customer,
Ma'am?
if you were a customer and you were given a bill, you went to sign up for OUA and said, yeah, I take it out of my, draw automatic draft, and went through all the proper paperwork, and was billed for sewer, volumetric rate, and for
The base
whatever
charge,
their
yes, ma'am.
statute rate is, wouldn't it be your assumption that OUA would know what they were doing?
That could be an assumption, yes, ma'am. And had you been connected to us, you would have been paying the base charge and the volumetric charge the whole time also.
I do.
Right.
I have been billed for that.
So what we're saying is, if you were connected in 2017, you would have been paying the base charge and the volumetric charge all along.
But I
What,
wasn't.
what we have determined is that through a previous billing, that property was assigned both water and sewer as if it were connected, and you were charged both the volumetric and the base charge for sewer. What we have determined, because you found the septic tank and we went out there and verified that you were not connected, what we can do is, back to when you purchased this in 2017, we would refund the volumetric charges. So if in 2017 you had bought the house and you were not connected to the sewer, you would have been paying us the base charges all along for sewer, because that's what our rate resolution says. What we are offering you is that credit of the volumetric charges because we didn't get the wastewater to treat it. So that's where the $314.52 comes from.
Now, that's final?
Ma'am?
Is that a final decision?
No, the board will make a decision. We're here to discuss it right now.
Okay.
And so what you would need to be able to do is, it would be up for the board to discuss. What they are pointing to you, that if you're going to talk to me, try to talk into the microphone so it can be recorded.
Sorry.
And I can hear what you're saying, but this board has to make the decision. The only thing I can tell you that I'm authorized to give you was the 3 months credit, which was not acceptable. So up for this board right here, the voting members, they have to hear your concern and consideration, and they would make the final decision if there's anything different than the 3 month credit that I've offered you already.
Did you understand that explanation,
Yes.
ma'am? Okay.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
We as a board do operate under policy and procedure, but we also set policy and procedure. So we, at the present time, our policy, if I understand correctly, is we can go back 3 months. I sympathize, and I actually agree with you. You know, you shouldn't pay for something that you're not getting. And I would be in favor, as a single board member, of doing the refund on the volumetric refund, but you're still going to be held accountable for the base charge, because everybody has to pay that no matter what. And I would encourage you heavily to tie in. Get rid
And
of
I
that
will.
septic
I
tank.
had no idea that thing was there.
Yeah, we're trying
It's-
to
it
convert
was
septic
a lot of
to
debris.
sewer all over town. Be the first to do it.
Okay.
But that's my position. I sympathize with you. You paid for something you really didn't get. We're looking at 2.5 years, 30 months approximately.
It would go back to 2017, and that's the number that's mentioned in there, in your board package.
You would do that as a credit or a refund?
It would be the customer's choice. Certainly, if they wanted to connect to the sewer, those fees could be paid against the connection fees, but we can work that out
Okay.
with her. It would be her choice to whether she wants to issue us a refund or credit to the account, either way.
Okay, now, that's my
And I would
position.
speak
You've got
with
4 other
Mr.
people here to make their opinions up too.
Then I'll speak with Mr. Hayworth with regard to that, the connection.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with John. To pay for something that you're not getting and not knowing that you're not, I agree that we should refund that money.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Motion to refund the money back to 2017 when the initial account started.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Jeff?
Jeff,
And that was a refund of $314.52?
that is correct.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Moving on to item number 14, trust banking refunding.
Tommy's not here.
We did all that.
He's sitting.
Okay, George, you want this one true, the bank?
Morning, board members.
Good morning.
We brought back to you per your direction for final approval the Truist Bank refunding. And the advantages of this are, if we were to go forward with the 2020 A5 note for 5 years and the 2020 B note for 10 years, there'd be no prepayment penalty going forward on the 2020 A note. And then on the 2002 B note, there would be no prepayment penalty for the last 5 years of that note. These lower interest rates will reduce OUA's total interest expense. And if you look at the bottom of the agenda item there, you'll see that on the A note, we save $96,900. On the B note, we save $525,000 for a total savings on interest over the next 10 years of $622,000. And the cost to accomplish that is the cost of issuance and a prepayment penalty of $140,550. Now, this particular presentation, because since we were here last time, the notes have been changed from non-qualified bank to bank qualified rates, and that change of 3 basis points results in $168,000 additional savings in interest. So the last time we looked at this, we were only looking at a $313,000 savings. Now we're looking at $481,000 savings. So staff recommends you approve it.
And why wouldn't we? Any reason?
Yeah, right.
Sir?
Reason why we wouldn't?
You wouldn't want to pay the prepayment penalty or cost of issuance. That's the only reason.
Okay.
And I understand there's only one prepayment penalty, right? One of them there, they waived the penalty on, we got it on the other one. Or it didn't exist on the A and it was the B or something?
On the existing notes, the 17A and the 17B, they cut the prepayment penalty in half
Cut
to
it
do
in
this
half.
transaction.
Okay. I knew there was something there, but.
Yeah, it's still something saving almost $500,000.
And this is going to save us, we're not going to see this for 20 years, but it's still, we need to see it. 10 years, 5 and 10 years, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I was doing math in my head, and that's never good.
Understood.
Yeah, I think it's foolish not to do it personally. Just a good business move.
I had my reservations, but I withdraw them.
Convince us.
Do I have a motion to accept?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second
To
that.
save the money.
This is a resolution.
Resolution
You
I
make
have a
20-01.
motion. I have a second. Any further discussion from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
You might get John to read that into the record for you.
I think he's texting his wife or something.
Trying to turn to the right page.
Item agenda number 15.
Mr. Chairman,
Oops.
just for the record, I would read the resolution 2001 by title only. George should read this long one. A resolution of the Oak Authority Board of the Okeechobee Utility Authority amending and supplementing resolution number 99-3 as amended and supplemented, authorizing the issuance not exceeding $7,340,000 utility system capital improvement refunding revenue note series 20A and not exceeding $9,050,000 utility system capital improvement refunding revenue note series 20B of the Okeechobee Utility Authority as of the bonds pursuant to Article 3 of Section 4G of Resolution 99-3 for the purpose of refunding on a current basis all of the authority's outstanding utility system capital improvement refunding revenue note Series 2017A, and refunding on a current basis of all the authority's outstanding utility system capital improvement refunding revenue note Series 2017B, awarding the sale of such notes to Truist Bank, subject to the execution and delivery of the pricing agreement for the Series 2020A note and pricing agreement for Series 2020B note, approving the forms and authorizing execution of the Series 2020A note and the Series 2020B note, providing for the terms and payment of said utility system capital improvements, refunding revenue notes, and the rights, remedies, and security of the holders of such notes, making certain covenants in connection therewith, designating each note as a qualified tax-exempt obligation within the meaning of Section 265, paren B, paren 3 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, as amended, authorizing the proper officers of the authority to do all other things deemed necessary or advisable to the sale and delivery of the Series 2020A note and the Series 2020B note, and providing for an effective date. Whew.
Long title. Good job, John.
I'd just like to, Mr. Capco's here, if there's any comment that you might like to make for us?
Thank you. Bill Capco from Lewis, Longman and Walker, and I've had the privilege of being bond counsel on every transaction since the authority's inception, and certainly enjoy working with the staff and Mr. Connolly. Yeah, this is, as you know, this is just like refinancing your mortgage, and there's really no downside to it. We were able to research, and I'm going to be able to deliver the opinion about the bank qualification, which provides an additional benefit to the bank, their treatment by the IRS. So that was what we're able to get the interest rate down a little bit lower and save a little bit more. So really, I guess congratulations are in order. Your staff did a good job of negotiating this, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any, I just wanted to hear your comment.
Thank you for making the trip.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Sir. Moving on, item agenda number 15, Lakeview Estates.
Oh, yeah, we voted before.
Mr. Chair and board members, you have in front of you Lakeview Estates. Lakeview Estates, just to give you some background, is located in about as far from the OUA offices as possible. I'd never get my compass directions right in Buckhead Ridge. I'm assuming it's in, I always call it the southern extent of Buckhead Ridge, but it's more likely the southwest corner of Buckhead Ridge. But be that as it may, it's a small residential community that was privately held for many years. And in or about 1999 or so, the private utility owner abandoned the utility. We know how that story ends with the musical chairs. Everybody gets a chair at the end except the OUA. We're left standing, and it was given to us. And we've owned it, operated it since that time period. Fast forward to 2017, a state legislature assigned an appropriation to One Water Corporation for the design and implementation of some proprietary waste treatment system. The responsibility was to show a new and improved system that could be utilized within the state of Florida under these small-scale package treatment plants that would improve water quality within the state. the legislative appropriation deemed Okeechobee County or Dade County as the recipient of this demonstration project. Okeechobee County, the utility authority certainly was contacted, and this facility came to mind as possible doing this demonstration project for the state of Florida and One Water. It's been a couple years in the making. The way this process finally came about was that the state wanted to contract with the local public agency, that being the Okeechobee Utility Authority, who in turn would have a contract with One Water Corporation to do this design implementation of this project, of this smaller package treatment plant. So what you have in your board package is a copy of the state agreement that would be between the Okeechobee Utility Authority and the state of Florida to do this project. And then also there would be an agreement between the Okeechobee Utility Authority, One Water, and the contractor that was selected, if you will, to do this design build for One Water of this treatment plant. One Water is here and present this morning, would certainly be ready, willing, and able to do a short presentation to the board if you were so inclined to see what their process is, who they are, what they're about, since they will be a key component in the success of this project. Staff have reviewed both of these agreements. Certainly the state agreement is a standard boilerplate agreement that you have seen in the past, where once we receive pay requests from the contractor and we pay them, we would in turn send those pay requests up to the state to be reimbursed up to the appropriation amount of $1 million. I would entertain any questions or comments the board might have, or if you're so inclined, One Water is here, and you're more than willing to hear their presentation on their process, ask them questions, and we'll be here to follow up any questions with you.
John, it's my understanding from what I've read here, our only part in this basically is where you're going to be the grant manager on this, correct? With the contract for the with the $1 million
That is
allocation.
correct. Yes, sir, that is correct.
Everything else is the way life always has. The ratepayers are still going to pay their rate charges and everything. Nothing changes except we're a grant manager.
The only thing that would change, the existing customers would see no change. They would still get billed water and wastewater through the OUA. There are up to, I think, 8 homes up on the northern or the western Lissy Lane, whichever that direction is, that are currently on septic tanks that this contract would provide for their connection to the system. So they would see a slight difference. Currently, they get a water and wastewater bill. Sewer is available. Thou shalt connect per state statute. And we would make that connection, and then they would start getting a sewer bill. So for 6, 8 homes, whatever the total is up on the northern section of this Lissy Lane, they would end up being new connections.
Okay. Business as usual, just managing a grant then and picking up 8 customers.
Yeah, there would be things that we would have to do if this is approved. We would send those customers, those new customers, letters advising them of the availability of sewer, and then we'd have to follow through that process.
Thank you.
John, would there be any type of disruption of service to the existing customers?
The intent is there would be no disruption of customers, because once we're ready to start the new plan, it would just be a matter of switching over. So they should not see, it should be fairly seamless for all the customers. There will be some minor disruptions up on property, our property, when we're switching over from one plant to another. But as far as the customers per se out there in the Lakeview Estates area, they should see no difference whatsoever.
I'd like to hear the presentation. I don't know. I agree.
Well, Mr. Steve Kingsland is here. I would certainly invite him to come forward. He can introduce his company and the presentation, and we can go through it. It'll be about 2 to 3 hours. No, just kidding.
Turn the lights off, please. Morning.
Good morning. Steve Kingsland with One Water, Inc. I appreciate your time. As John indicated, it's been kind of a long road to get here, but we're finally here, and I really appreciate your attention. As John indicated, the intention of the grant is to demonstrate the algae wheel process for septic to sewer type conversions within the state of Florida. As everybody knows, there's numerous, failing or subpar septic systems, and the purpose is with the algae wheel technology to be able to have that as a solution to convert those septics to a sewer with more localized plants versus going to big pipe collection and treatment systems. Oh, great. Okay, so I'm with One Water, Inc. Our technology is algae wheel. So just a couple of slides that kind of set the stage. So the wastewater treatment industry in the U.S. is under pretty significant stress. Outdated infrastructure. Many of the plants that were initiated with the Clean Water Act are near the end of their useful life. The environmental regulations are continuing to get more stringent, particularly with nutrients, nitrogen, and phosphorus. There is an additional need for many plants to expand treatment capacity because of a growing population. And then, of course, conventional treatment, primarily activated sludge, is very energy intensive. As everybody knows, to treat wastewater, it requires bacteria, and bacteria typically require big blowers, and that's a heavy energy demand. So there's a need for lower energy solutions. And then, of course, in some regions, there are drought trends, and there's the need for local water reuse. There's some challenges with the smaller plants, particularly plants that see the highly variable flows and loads, and that could be seasonal changes, that could be places like parks and schools. Those smaller plants typically have relatively high operational costs and operator costs, and there is a shrinking supply of qualified operators in the U.S. And then, of course, everybody hears wastewater treatment or wastewater, and there's always these negative perceptions that it's ugly, it's smelly, it's noisy. I don't want this near me because of all those things. And that also makes it difficult to integrate these plants into the local community. So One Water developed the algae wheel system for this, the smaller community market, kind of to break the mold on all those typical perceptions. The first is the low energy, which I'll talk about real briefly. Easy to operate, and that's a function of the treatment process itself. Political benefits, the algae wheel system really doesn't look like your typical wastewater treatment plant, as you'll see. Superior treatment biology, I won't get into the nitty-gritty, but the biology works, it kind of follows the flow pattern during the heavy loads during the day and less loads at night. Very tolerant to those variable flows and loads. Reliable and robust process, which is all a part of the biology, and it provides year-round treatment regardless of temperatures. Obviously less of an issue here. Cost-effective CapEx. It's basically competitive with other technologies. Where the savings is with the life cycle cost, because the operational costs in electric are significantly less. And it's a viable solution for replacements, upgrades, new plants, whatever the case may be. Okay, so we like to use this slide for owners in particular, because we always ask them, well, what would you rather have, in your neighborhood, or where your people or your users are going to see, the old plant in the front or that new plant in the back? That new plant in the back is an algae wheel plant. This happens to be at a state park. or even less intrusive. On the left here, this is what we're proposing for Lakeview Estates. Our algae wheel process will actually just have some lower profile greenhouse style covers on the top. So the process itself, the algae wheel, this is a section through 4 algae wheels, and these wheels are roughly 3 foot in diameter, 16 inches wide. As you can see from the kind of the graphic, the wheels have fins on the outside. Those fins do 2 things for us. One is that's our drive mechanism. We bubble a little bit of air that catches under the fins of those wheels, and it lifts and rotates those wheels. Those wheels are actually floating. They're buoyant. The other thing those fins do is its surface area. This process requires lots of surface area, so that adds lots of surface area. Inside the wheel, as you can see, there's this media inside, and it's just small plastic pieces that add lots of surface area for treatment. The biology on our system, if you look at that kind of circle of life there in the top right, we're allowing sunlight into our system for a specific reason. Almost every wastewater plant in the country has nuisance algae, and that's because the conditions exist for it to grow, all the right ingredients. So what we're doing is we're harnessing that. So we have algae which uses sunlight for energy. So it's photosynthetic. It takes that energy in from the sun and uses it. As it grows, it produces oxygen. In our system, the sole purpose of algae is to provide oxygen for the bugs. It's basically our supercharger to feed the bacteria. It's basically a biological aeration system that means we don't have to have those large blowers that are typical of wastewater treatment. As the algae grows, it produces the oxygen, which supports the bacteria. That bacteria, of course, produce CO2, and that CO2 is an ingredient that's required by the algae. So you have this very natural, symbiotic relationship that's evolved over eons in nature. You know, if you went to a stream and you grabbed out a stone and it's got this green slime on it, that's that same biology that we're going to have on the algae wheel. It's a combination of algae and a combination of bacteria. Hopefully I wasn't too detailed there with that. The big picture here is we don't need the large blowers. We have the algae that does our aeration for the bugs. Just a short video, I'm not sure if this is going to work. Is there any way to trigger that? I just wanted to show the wheels turning in a tank. Well, it won't be cooperative today, I guess. That's all right. If it was able to work, what you would see is these wheels turning in these tanks. It's like a bubbler. You hear the air bubbling, turning the wheels. Each wheel turns independently. It's rotating around a fixed shaft, so there's no drive mechanism, and it's driven by the air bubbles by a small blower. Kind of the evolution of the technology, I won't go through all of these, but early 2000, the inventor, who was a guy from Indiana, his initial target was large-scale aquaria, and he has systems in the Brookfield Zoo. He had a pilot running at Disney World for a while, and the whole idea was that the algae and the biology is treating the waste, breaking off, and then the fish are eating that byproduct and basically recycling it. And then he evolved it into, with some pilots, and did some septic, pre-treatment for a high-strength septic, municipal pilots, and then started putting systems in. And the first system that was put in that was actually discharging effluent to a stream, so stream discharge with a federal NPDES permit, was in 2011 at the Cincinnati Nature Center. And the system continued to evolve until the pictures on the left, which is basically the system that we have now. So we have systems in all types of different applications. So just a few pictures of some plants. We've got the top left is a school, top middle is a park, the top right is a municipality in Indiana, kind of middle left, that's a mobile home park in Illinois. We've got a Speedway gas station / rest stop with a Greasy Spoon as well as a Burger King. Middle right is our first plant that was put in Mexico last year. Bottom left is that initial discharging plant we put in Cincinnati, at Cincinnati Nature Center, which is the first stream discharge system. And then the bottom right is another very large private prep school on Lake Michigan. Just wanted to give you a few examples of some of our plants. A couple of shots inside. Top left was a brand new system that started up, and you can see the algae wheel process in that instance was the wheels were in parallel tanks. Top right is a slide just showing you that green slime, that's what we're looking for on those wheels. So you've got a combination of algae and bacteria residing together. And then the bottom three, again, we've got another inside shot. The algae wheel duty blowers, which are there just to turn the wheels. And then, of course, the control panel that powers and monitors the system. So the solution we're proposing at Lakeview is a combination of new equipment as well as using part of the existing system. I guess I don't have a pointer that works on the screen, do I? Or does it work? Okay, well, it doesn't really point though. Oh, there it is. Whoop, sorry. Okay, so this is the old plant here. And then we have our new tankage. So we've got a combination of, and I'm sorry you guys are facing the wrong way, but we've got oh, you can see it over there. Okay, we've got a combination of some ancillary tanks, which include anox tanks. What we're going to do with this system, the current limit on this plant has a nitrate limit. We're actually going to treat for total nitrogen, which includes the nitrate, but it's in addition to that. It targets all nitrogen components, which is what we're looking for to take to the rest of the state, because there are places that have significantly more stringent limits than would be out there. So we've got the ancillary tanks, and then we've got a long algae wheel process tank here on the bottom. And we're going to take out part of the existing discharge field and rebuild the rest of discharge field 1, where this is going to be installed. So the flow, I'm not going to go through all the bits and pieces, but it flows between these ancillary tanks, the algae wheel process, and then the final flow gets pumped into the existing clarifier disinfection system and out to the discharge field. So it's a kind of a combination of new and old. But the way we're going to do this is if we get to the end of this project or at some point we say it doesn't work, we turn all of our stuff off and the old plant is back online doing what it was doing for years. But you know, the goal is that this basically significantly improves treatment at this location and provides options to go elsewhere in the state. I won't even get into that. This is just kind of a plumbing diagram showing the plumbing between the different tanks. As far as the collection system, as John mentioned, so the red lines on here, that's the existing collection system to the homes in this Lakeview community. And then up on the kind of the top left, that Lissy Lane, those are the homes that would be tied in as part of the collection system expansion to capture those homes along the northwest side. Questions?
Your algae wheel system will destroy part of the drain field. Now, if the system doesn't work, will that drain field be replaced? Or?
So, and I have Matt Tebow here with Kimley Horn, who's the engineer on the project. And what we're going to do is we're going to rebuild, we're going to improve the discharge field that's there. So we're going to shrink it, but now, you know, that discharge has been in there since whenever that plant was built. And there are techniques you can use now to actually improve the capacity of a discharge field. So we're going to rebuild that section of that one field. So it'll have more capacity than it does now in a smaller footprint. So we will make sure that there is not limited capacity, and then obviously that has to be approved by the DEP as well.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Well, as usual, there's a cost differential between old and new. Can you give us an idea of what that particular unit would cost versus if they just redid the old one?
Well, the difficulty with the answer is that we're adding, we're treating to a better quality. So if that plant was put in brand new as a new activated sludge plant, it would be competitive cost, only we're going to have better treatment. To rebuild the existing plant, I'm not really sure what that would require. There would be additional things that would be added to it if your goal was to treat to the quality that we're going to treat with the Algewell system. Exactly what that is, I don't know for sure. I mean, if that was the goal, I would presume it would be less, because you wouldn't have to do the collection system expansion is part of the grant requirement. To add, to convert some septics to sewer, so that wouldn't be required. I'm not really sure what else you would need to do, to be honest with you, but I'm assuming it would be less because the scope of the project would be less.
What about operational cost comparison to the old plant and your system?
So, and that's part of the project, is to gather all that data, to make comparisons of the energy costs. The fixed film process, one of the benefits of a fixed film process, without getting too dweeby, is it's a simple process because it doesn't require a lot of operator intervention. There was an old process called an RBC, which this is really an RBC, but of a different style. And they were great from an operator standpoint, great treatment. They had some mechanical issues that made them not so good. But I guess part of this whole program is to gather all that information and present it to the DEP. So lower operating costs is from an operational, operator attention. Lower energy demand is the big one. I would expect, what we've seen in other locations, like one of the projects I showed you was a school that went from a 15 horsepower duty blower to a 1.5 horsepower duty blower with the Algewell system. So, the energy was like 25% of the old plant. So we would expect to see something similar here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So again, going through the process, if we were to move forward with this, we would have to have discussions and look at the state grant as far as the One Water proposal. Then we would get start time, notify the customers of what's going on and what we're doing. Again, and once they submit payments to us, for request for payment from the contractor or One Water, the OUA would be responsible for paying those pay requests. We, in turn, would then submit those pay requests to the state seeking reimbursement. So there will always be a little bit of a lag and delay, but that's what we run into with this process that we've done in the past for like Pine Ridge Park. Contractor submitted a pay request, it was approved, we paid it, and then in turn we submitted that to the state to seek reimbursement, and this would be the same process.
Need any,
If the board decides to go forward with this, it's going to be a two-step process. The first is approval of the DEP grant agreement. And the second step, John's got that outlined, would be approval of the three-party agreement between the OUA, One Water, and Kane Enterprises. This has been a lot of fun getting this to this stage. The idea, as far as the OUA is concerned, we're supposed to be a conduit. It's designed so that it doesn't cost the OUA anything. It sounds like a good experimental project that the legislature has looked at and approved the funding through the DEP for this type project. It's an experiment. We don't know if it works, we don't know if it doesn't work. But if it does work, it doesn't cost us anything. If it doesn't work, it doesn't cost us anything, because they're supposed to pay for the reestablishment and the re-hookups.
Be great for education purposes, so.
If it doesn't work, are they going to remove the plant? Or is that our job?
Well, I think they abandon it, but we hook up, they pay for the hookups to get the system back operational again.
Okay.
So we need to approve the DEP grant first.
Yes.
And let me-
Motion to approve the DEP grant.
and
I
I'll
have a
second that.
motion. I have a second.
Who's
Any further
second?
di-
Carl?
Jeff.
Jeff, you're the second? Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Included in that motion is the authorization to execute it by the appropriate
So
officers, of course.
So stated.
Yes. Agreed? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Third-party agreement?
Then the next one is the three-party agreement between the OUA, One Water, and Kane Enterprises.
I have a motion.
We have a motion, so stated.
I have a
Second.
motion. I have a second from Mr. Leonard. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Again, who made the motion? And who seconded?
I only get so many chances.
Carl,
John.
okay?
I'm glad to have you here, Jeff.
I don't want to be out of order.
Making up for lost time.
Yeah.
All right, John. Moving on to item agenda number 16, More to Life Ministries water main installation.
Board, again, this is a revisit of the project that you have seen in the past. Since that time, and at that time, it was the construction of the More to Life Ministries facility up on Northeast 39th Boulevard, also known as Cemetery Road. This project would require an extension of a water main to be able to serve both the domestic and fire protection measures needed for that property. There were originally two quotes prepared, one for an 8-inch water main and a second one for a 12-inch water main. A question was brought up as to whether or not that water main could be extended to serve a residential, the residential R-Bar estates that would be further down on Northeast 39th Boulevard, or extended to the Okeechobee Youth Development Center, formerly known as Eckerd Youth, on 441 North. The R-Bar estates, the OUA had sent out a notice to them about the availability of water and what it would cost approximately on a monthly basis, just to see if there was interest within that development for an extension of a water main. At the time that I submitted this, we didn't have the count, but since then you've been given a count that says it's 71 to 20, 71 no's, 20 yes. So clearly there was an indication that they were not interested in fire protection or water service in R-Bar. I have reached out to the Department of Juvenile Justice, and they have spoken verbally, at least a favorable review that they would be interested in service, but they would need obviously more information before actually committing specifically the financial cost, the capital cost to extend the water main. So we would work that out as time permits in the future. More to Life Ministries is here this morning to entertain any questions, comments from the board. Basically, it is going to stem around the cost of the 12-inch water main versus the 8-inch water main, whether that would be a developer-funded requirement or a cost share between the developer, that being More to Life Ministries, and the OUA. Certainly, it would be an issue that the 8-inch water main should be large enough to serve their needs. But from a perspective of the OUA, for future development, either Okeechobee Youth Development Center or R-Bar, it would certainly be a recommendation that we upgrade that to a 12-inch water main up to including the entrance to their property. At this time, I'll answer any questions that you might have as the OUA board, or More to Life Ministries is here, and they may be able to answer your questions.
John, I have one question on this information that you supplied to us on the first bullet point about letting the developer construct the 8-inch.
That is correct.
That developer would be More to Life's contractor?
Correct. That would be one option that they could, our rates and policies that we go by clearly states that if it was to be considered only for that development, that would be at the expense of the developer. In this case, since it is going to be utilized by the OUA potentially in the future for Okeechobee Youth Development or RBAR possibly, that there might be some consideration of that cost-sharing method.
In the scope of that work would be all the way from 441 out to More to Life?
It would be from 441 More to Life. That could be something that would be done depending upon how we want to do it. If the OUA was taking the lead, certainly the OUA could put in that water main either with the cost participation or cost direction, depending on what this board decides today. But it is a water main that we could put in.
If I understood from our last meeting with Mr. Dobbs, he said you've got it engineered. It's property, everything's good to go on your end. It's just a matter of construction, correct? I hate to put you in a corner, Steve, but I think that's what I recall you saying.
I figured I would, yes, I figured I would come up and so I could be recorded. Steve Dobbs, representing More to Life Ministries. Yes, they, excuse me, it was engineered and permitted many, many years ago for a different project. But we still have those, all of that engineering ready to go. Of course, that had to be resubmitted. The permits have long since expired. But yes, sir, everything is ready to go.
Doing a recall.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
No, that was the only one I wanted to make sure the developer, we've had this discussion in the past where OUA can be classified as a developer when we were dealing with some in Whispering Pines and Basswood. I wanted to make sure we were getting clarification on the developer.
And that clarification is really on whether or not the OUA wanted to consider utilizing some of these facilities. Then it would be more of a cost share. Again, from a standpoint of who does the work, I mean, that would be at the direction of either somebody other than me, More to Life or this board. I'm just saying that we could do the work. We have done the work in the past if that was the inclination or direction of this board.
Thank you.
And we do have enough information to realize that the prices that have been set, given by John are, good, and like to work with you all if possible.
Okay. Well, it's not to Steve, but it's unfortunate that RBAR doesn't want to come into some cost-sharing part on this, because when we do go down that road a little bit later, they're going to have to absorb a lot more expense than they would if they wanted to party up with us now.
Well, clearly, I wasn't at liberty to tell them that we would connect for free, like the connection charges, like what the OUA board was able to do for Whispering Pines. But again, from my perspective, let alone on the savings that they might be able to realize for better insurance rates because of the availability of fire protection in the neighborhood, as well as 24/7 availability. I certainly thought it would be a benefit for them, but if it was left up to them to decide, clearly 90 out of the 160 letters we sent out, they did respond.
Does staff have a recommendation on what route we should go?
The staff recommendation is that we would certainly consider that there is still room for development in getting to, even if it is to Okeechobee Youth Development Center, and I would certainly recommend that we consider a sharing of that cost, if for the least, that we exercise the option to upgrade it to a 12-inch. I would think that from the standpoint of flow capacity, whether it's going to Okeechobee Youth Development or eventually R-Bar, that there would be cost sharing would be a consideration.
I have a question for the representatives of More to Life. Are we ready to put a shovel in the ground on this, guys, or is this just for to secure some financing?
We are very ready to put a shovel in the ground. This has been a big hurdle. I'll just tell you on behalf of More to Life, first of all, thank you to the board for listening to us, but we are anxious to move ahead. This has been a big hurdle for us, and we look forward to down the road being faithful paying customers to the OUA for many, many years after this. We look forward to using everything that you have for us. We're just looking for some startup help, to be honest with you. So thank you for even your consideration today.
Yeah, you will pay your bill. You see what we're being called here, the water Nazis and mafia. You will pay your bill.
We would gladly and faithfully pay our bill.
Joking. Okay. That was my question to look if we were ready to expedite this and get going, or was it just for another purpose? So you've answered that.
We're setting on go waiting. So
Articulated that quite clearly, Gary. Thank you.
It would seem to me, it makes sense to put that 12-inch line in. Just
Yes,
from
sir.
a
It does give us the option. I mean,
practical standpoint, because it's going to, all that area is going to grow.
there's the biggest push that we have with the DJJ is really, like in any system, it's the fire protection measure, because they have a lot of buildings, a lot of folks out there, and with an 8-inch water main, that's not large enough. So the 12-inch, coupled with the elevated storage tank that they have on the facility, would be able to provide the fire protection and the domestic need. Just as a reminder, we currently are the provider for wastewater service for the Okeechobee Youth Development Center. This would bring it in line that we would actually be the provider of both water and wastewater services for Okeechobee Youth Development Center.
Would the OUA be doing the installation no matter what size the pipe was?
Yes, sir, either one. We could do either one, 8 or 12.
Because I'm not sure what I was listening to you. You're saying there's an option here between two things. Which one does the OUA prefer?
From a staff perspective, if we've always gone with the idea that if we're the installation, we know we own the pipe, we will be able to maintain it forever and ever and a day. If we go out with outside contractors, then we have to be the overseer of that construction, and we still spend a considerable amount of time doing the shop drawing review and the inspections and the certification at the end of the day.
Well, it would be much more cost-effective or economical if we install the pipe, and I agree with that.
Yes, sir.
I was trying to see the difference, because you're saying we've got two options, and I'm not sure which one.
The one option is we don't benefit from it. The developer, More to Life Ministries, puts in the 8-inch, and we call it good. The other option is we split the cost in some means for the 8-inch pipe, and then we pay for the upgrade of the material to go instead of 8-inch, 12-inch, because the cost of installation between 8 and 12-inch pipe is negligible. It's the same trench width, it's the same number of people. The only difference being truly would be the cost of the material difference from 8-inch piping, 8-inch valves to 12.
I think it ought to be a 12-inch line, I agree.
So if we do the second option, if I did my math correctly, the $99,000 would be resulting of splitting 50-50, the cost of the installation of the 8-inch plus the upgrade for 12. That was just for instance, for this board. The cost sharing could be anything that's discussed between the board and More to Life Ministries in any way, shape, or form. This was just a suggestion.
Well, I'm very much on board with the cost sharing of the 8-inch, and then OUA paying for the additional cost to upgrade it to the 12. It's a win-win for us. DJJ right there is going to be a customer that would really increase our numbers, our customer base. And hopefully R-Bar down the road, we can look forward to that. There's a lot of options out there. So I'm in favor of cost sharing plus us picking up the difference on from 8 to 12, because we'll get that back down the road.
And the cost sharing being the 50-50 split then?
On the 8-inch, cost share that, and then we pick up the.
That would be the extra.
That's my position now. It's open for discussion. I'd like to start discussions.
How about just splitting the total cost right down the middle? Instead of just splitting the 8-inch cost.
I don't see them benefiting from the 12. That would be future customers down the road.
Well, they're benefiting from
The 8-inch.
the 8 and our cost participation. That may not be a 50% participation, but it's, if we split the total cost down the middle, our portion would be, if my math is right, 85,803.
That is correct.
Well, you have my position. You have Harry's.
What's the board's pleasure?
Makes sense to me.
Gotta have the 12-inch, why do anything else?
Right.
Well, I
Yeah,
think we all agree on the 12-inch, but how do we want to split it? 50/50 or the way it's being presented? Is there any way, I'm not going to say this right, I know what my head's thinking, I'm not sure I can get it out of my mouth. For the upgrade on the first option, we would only pay, let's say, $27,000, right? I'm just rounding, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So that means that the developer construction, do they know what their cost is going to be?
Yeah, it was 140, I think.
144 or something.
Okay.
The estimate we came up with was 144,871,000 to do an 8-inch water main.
Okay. And if we participated in the second one, the cost would be $171,600?
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's with us installing. And we own it at that point.
I would think, yeah.
The other one we don't.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good for both of us, because if I'm reading this right, then the costs for the developer by partnering with us 50/50, their cost is going to be less.
Then if they installed it by themselves, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
The math certainly is simple. If you just say it's the 171,606 divided by 2, 50-50 split, it makes it around, as Harry said, $85,803 per party, More to Life and OUA.
In the proposal that I have, OUA would pick up, or would pay $99,170, and More to Life would pay $72,435.
That is correct.
That's my proposal.
I'm sorry. My client asked me to come up and ask where they sign.
That's for what? Where do they sign? Oh. Then 85,803 each party.
Where do they sign?
Oh.
Got a motion?
I'll second. Or
What-
I'll
what-
make a
what is
motion.
I'm sorry, what was the motion?
Motion is to split 50/50 with the developer, with the OUA constructing. Is that correct?
So that each party pays the 85,803.
Right.
For a 12-inch
So
line.
that's
For
bullet
12-inch
point number 2, correct?
No.
No. It's not, it's bullet point 3.
Okay. Gotcha.
So if I understand the motion, the OUA is going to do the construction of a 12-inch water main. The estimated cost here is $171,606. For the purposes of that, More to Life Ministries, their contribution is $85,803.
Yes.
Is that your motion, Melanie?
That's my
I
motion.
have a
I'll
motion.
second it.
I have a second. Any further discussion?
Just one, are we going to be able to utilize the stuff that Steve was talking about in the history, the engineering and the routes and all of that? We just have to
We could
update
try
the
to
permitting.
utilize the plans for permitting purposes.
So there won't be any additional cost down the road, that's all inclusive to what we're doing,
If
maybe some
we,
permit fees.
if we use the plans, the permitting through the OUA is there are no application fees with the Department of Environmental Protection.
Okay, thank you.
John, could I ask a question? When you
Yes, yes,
finish
ma'am.
making your note? Of the responses that we got from our bar estate, the positive responses, if we got any, could they we could get them hooked up once we're in the ground?
No, ma'am, it's going to require a significant amount of investment on our part to extend the water main to our bar.
Okay.
The only thing that may change the no's to yes, if there was some determination made by this board that they would have no connection cost in the road right-of-way like the OUA provided to the Whispering Pines project. So in other words, waiving the meter connection cost, that type of deal. That might spur more development. But at this point, I did share with them that there was capital connection charges and meter charges. I did not share with them on the construction side because I didn't know what those costs were. So there could be, as a leapfrog of this project, to look at those additional customers. Again, it would be about another 160 customers, would be whether there would be any cost that would be waived by the OUA board.
I think we should look at it. Thank you.
But that would be project number 2.
Right.
Yes, right. I
Or
think they're
3.
significant enough to look into it.
Well, I
There's
mean,
enough interest to look into it.
It's the problem that I shouldn't say problem. The issue we'd have to look at they're large parcels. So you have a very low density relationship as in some other neighborhoods where there are smaller lots, more customers, more connections.
But
we,
they
I
are
mean,
customers.
it would be relatively straightforward.
Yeah, but
It would be relatively straightforward construction, but it could easily be done.
why can't we do both?
on this dude.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm just being persnickety.
So if I could, Tom, could you, based on that knowledge, then be able to draft like up a memorandum of understanding or agreement that it would be between OUA and More to Life Ministries? Okay.
Moving on to item agenda number 17.
Mr. Chair and board members, you have in front of you the delightful proposals that the selection committee was able to review. You had your chances to look at those 7 proposals that we received from the engineering group that is listed here below you, from Bowman through Holtz and Eckler and all of those engineering groups. The RFPs were advertised in January and received in February 24th, 3 p.m., Wednesday, the 26th. The OUA selection committee, consisting of board member John Kreisman, myself, and Jamie Mullis as the operations director, we individually evaluated the proposals, and you have in front of you the ranking of those proposals and the scores from all 3 of us. When you look through there, Eckler Engineering came out as the number 1 firm on all 3 review by myself, John Kreisman, and Jamie Mullis. And certainly that is the recommendation to the full board, that we have a clear number 1 and 2 and 3 basically came out as tied. So what is up for the board now is to determine the final ranking, if you can, from looking at our scores versus the score sheet and the proposals for the OUA board to establish what the final ranking of these submittals are going to be, and then direct OUA staff to begin the negotiations for a scope of work and a fee schedule with that number 1 ranked firm.
Board members, is there any discussion, or do you want to accept what staff recommends?
I mean, the staff knows what they're doing, but, you know,
Yeah.
no reason to doubt their credibility in this. By all means, let's,
Okay, then do I have a motion to accept?
motion to accept staff's recommendation.
I have a motion to accept.
I'll second.
I have a second by Ms. Melanie Anderson. Any further discussion?
I'd like to just make one comment. So people could save a lot of money for not providing every one of us a copy of these, because we're going to pay for it no matter what happens. I mean, I don't know how many people read that. I didn't.
I hear what you're saying, but ultimately, the final ranking will be by this board. And so if you don't get a chance to look at the proposals, basically then what you would be doing is accepting the review committee's ranking.
And that's what we should do,
Okay.
because, you know, y'all are the experts of this. We're just a bunch of pogues up here sitting, making decisions. But to me, it was just a total waste of money for all of these individual parts.
Did you read all of it? I've waded through the thing too. So.
Yeah.
By the way, I do agree with the,
If it's the intent of the board where you don't want to look at these proposals, I have no problem cutting the number down. But from my standpoint, when we laid this out, I thought it might be kind of imperative for, as a full board, to see what it was, or at least have the opportunity to look at what we looked at in this ranking.
And it probably would not be bad if the chairman, the vice chairman, and the second vice chairman got a copy of it.
Okay.
Just
Because-
a question, I'm sorry, Carl, doesn't the engineering firms develop these and give them to us, or are you doing them in-house?
The engineering firms do the development and have those costs to present it. From our standpoint, we didn't copy these. They were
Just hand them
delivered
out
to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there is a cost to create them. I mean.
Somebody will pay for it. Probably us.
That was the guy that wants the job.
The cost, and it's in the RFP, if you look at it, all costs incurred in submitting this proposal will be borne by the firm doing the submittal. Our cost was to distribute, to drive out to your houses and deliver these proposals for your review. And again, if it's the board's position, the full board's position, that you would accept the recommendation of the review committee, and we make only a few available, that's fine, whatever the board's direction.
It was an opinion, not necessarily anything else.
Point
Christie was
taken. Point
standing in
taken.
front of the copy machine making these things, I'd stop. You're killing too many trees.
That being said, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
So that was just accepting the initial ranking of the committee.
Right.
The next step would be authorization, or at least direction, if you will, and I don't know if Tom wants this in the way of a motion, but the next step is for staff to negotiate with the number 1 ranked firm to develop a scope of work and fee schedule
That would be correct.
that we would bring back to the board for presentation
That would
and
be
or
part of the
discussion.
Right.
So motion,
approve the ranking, authorize negotiation.
I have a motion.
Second?
I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. John, would you please proceed with it?
Okay. We will bring that back at the next meeting then.
Moving on to item agenda number 18, Auditor Selection Committee.
Mr. Chairman, board members, you have in your package the Auditor Selection Committee. Our current auditor is fulfilling the last year of their current contract. The biggest difference, and so what we are going to need is to go out for an RFP for selecting an auditor for the coming years. The biggest change that we have encountered under this year is there was a recent change to the ruling that eliminated myself and George acting on behalf of the OUA board to go out and prepare an RFP and go through this selection process, sort of like what we did for Pine Ridge Park, where board members sat on a review committee, we reviewed them and came back to the board for a review of those proposals, the initial ranking, and establishing that. The state statute now excludes us from any part in that process. So what we have here is we've contacted several outside parties, being Robbie Chartier and India Riedel, to sit in and be a part of the selection committee, and we would need one board member appointed to act as the chair of the selection committee to go through that process of establishing the RFP, submitting it out for advertisements, gathering up the proposals, and then doing the ranking. George and I would have to be excluded from that process. If George can add his points in on this also.
Yeah, John, myself, and any OUA employee cannot be a voting member on the committee, but we can be there to give you advice or assistance, but we just can't be one of the voting members directing the process. So the committee is responsible for coming up with an RFP, asking us to advertise it and distribute it appropriately, and then the committee would be responsible for ranking the CPA firms that respond, and then it would be brought back to the board to decide which CPA firm to select. So the committee would also be responsible for coming up with the criteria on how you rank them.
I have a question, John, George, Tom, somebody. If you have one board member acting as the auditor selection committee chair, where do the other two come from? You got a three-person committee, correct?
That would be the Robbie Chartier and India Riedel. They're outside of the OUA, would be a part of that review committee.
Okay. Now I see where they play into that. Yes, gotcha. Okay. All right, so you need somebody to volunteer to be chair?
I think Ms. Anderson would be a great person.
Yeah, Melanie will do it.
Their background in banking.
You have a volunteer.
You have a volunteer.
I couldn't get down any lower in this chair.
Thank you, John. Ms. Anderson, thank you. You served me.
You could tell that she wasn't in the military.
I think it should be the board member that's not here, myself.
Yeah, that's, don't ever miss a meeting.
I do owe Mr. Clay a pay.
I'm just
Well,
kidding.
let him do it.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. Moving on to item agenda 19, 66-acre lease agreement.
Mr. Chair and board members, the 66 acres has been under lease to Pierce Cattle Company for some time. Their current lease has expired. They've expressed an interest if we could. I believe the lease allowed for an extension. And so he has certainly requested consideration to keep his cows on the property, to extend the lease, of which you will find attached to your board package, a first addendum to the lease agreement between Okeechobee Utility Authority and Pierce Cattle Company that would extend their use of the property under their current terms to the year 2022. They have signed a copy of the lease, first addendum. They provided their insurance qualifications, paid the property taxes. I believe they've even given us a check. They're ready to go should the board be receptive to executing this first addendum to their current lease agreement.
Well, they've been good tenants for a long time.
I
I
have a-
recommend that we approve the lease extension.
I agree.
I'll second it.
I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question for council. Do we have to advertise this being what it is? That
Now, you've already
we've
got an existing
extension?
lease, I would say no. We're just extending it.
In the lease.
Thank you. Just didn't want to get in trouble.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 20 is the June 8th, 2020 OUA Board of Directors meeting. It's going.
Mr. Chair and board members, we have received notice from the Okeechobee County that they're calling first dibs on the meeting room for this date, June 8th. They are having to move their meeting that was scheduled for Thursday to Monday, and they have requested our idea to redirect the meeting to some other date, either another Monday meeting or move it to June 9th of 2020.
Anybody have a problem with Tuesday?
No?
Make a motion, we move it to Tuesday.
Motion,
Would that be Tuesday,
The 9th.
June 9th?
9th. Do I have a
As
second?
long as the
What-
room
what-
is available.
We will confirm that. What time?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
10 a.m. on June 9th.
9th, correct.
And that's John C.
Do I have
Second?
A second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Ms. Anderson. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
while we're on this topic, you know, have we heard anything from our board member that's no longer in town? Is he coming back? Worried about him. He's not around anymore.
I just got a call this morning that his work schedule changed and he had to leave either last night or early this morning, and he would miss the meeting today.
Okay.
He extended his apologies, but it was an unannounced work change that he out of his control, and he had to go out of town.
Now, the reason I'm asking, and it's not, I know you guys were gracious, the board was gracious enough to move it to 10 to meet my schedule, and we moved it to Monday to meet Tom's schedule because he's out of town on the weekend. His whole life has changed apparently since then. I understand there's a hardship on staff to get stuff out on Mondays and adjust things Mondays. It worked better on Tuesday. I've been told that. Could we contact him as executive director and see if what's going on, to see if we could alleviate some of the stress on you guys? Moving it to Tuesday to alleviate the stress?
Well, the benefit of a Tuesday, from a staff perspective, me specifically, is if there is something that comes up over the weekend as far as questions from the board when we get the OUA board packages out, that we have a little time to respond and to get that information out, to be able to research that. And so there is that benefit that moving it from a Monday to a Tuesday allows us to do any research or last minute acquisition coming from questions from board members as you review the board packages over the weekend if we have to supply some information. So there is that benefit of a Tuesday meeting allowing that to happen.
The last thing I want to do is inconvenience Tommy Clay. He's been an asset on this board. He's been
Yes,
here a long time. It's just, it's trying to keep all these balls in the air to get what you just articulated and keep him happy and all that. He's not going to be able to participate for the duration of a job. Maybe we could adjust some things is all I'm getting at. To help you if he's not going to be available. If he's available, forget I even brought it up.
We're open to whatever the board directs. I mean, I can reach out to him if you want and ask him what his work schedule is, but other than that, certainly, the biggest element is obviously just getting ready and the agenda ready for the board meeting. The only, like I say, the only benefit of Tuesday, if there are questions that are raised over the weekend, we do have Monday, today, to be able to get that ready to go. So yes, Tuesday is slightly better from a staff perspective.
Mr. Colley?
All right. Moving on to item agenda number 21, public. Anybody would like to come forward?
She left. I expected her to come back up.
Yes, not. Item agenda number 22. Mr. Conley, anything?
We've got I may be the holdup on this, on our closing on the purchase of the 2-acre piece from the school board. I've done my part on getting the petition and the vacating portion done, and I've submitted it to Bill Royce. I need to check with Bill Royce and see exactly where the holdup is on this. I'd rather the vacating be complete when we do our deal and the whole 40 acres be vacated, not just the little piece that we're talking about. And it's easier with only one owner instead of 2 owners being involved. It's my fault because I haven't checked with Bill Royce. I've got to get with him and see why that hasn't moved forward. So I take the blame on that. We're trying to get a trial date on our site on 46th Avenue. I'm not quite sure where we are on that. Getting a trial date's going to be a problem because you got to fit it in with the judge's schedule. I think they've asked for a jury trial, if I'm not mistaken. That'll make it even more complicated, but I'm hoping we can get by with a trial by the judge without a jury, but we'll see. Those are the 2 main things I can speak to right now. Unless there's anything you know more about it than I do, John.
On the 46th Avenue?
On our 46th Avenue.
No, we're going to try to get a trial date, and it's to fit into the schedule of the court. We're, for the most part, prepared to move forward and get an answer once and for all on this whole issue.
Try to get this thing resolved. Those are the only 2 things I know that's in the frying pan on my side.
Gotcha. Okay. Items from our executive director.
Mr. Chairman, board members, you clearly have the, in your board package, some of the items that we're ready and moving forward on. Briefly, the Southwest Wastewater Service area, we're moving forward with the survey, the route survey. It's a lengthy process to go through and pick up, finding property corners, picking them up, looking for the legals in the search. We have met this past week with the county concerning Oak Lake Terrace or Oak Lake Estates. They want to move forward with their drainage project, and what we are trying to do is to develop our dry line permit so that we can go ahead and put in our piping system while they're doing the stormwater project, so we only disrupt the neighborhood once. We are moving forward with that. We met with, they had a public meeting in this room last week, so we were able to be present for that, meet with some of the property owners, and we'll move forward with that. On the Southeast 8th Avenue, for the most part, the new water main is in. It's passed the pressure and the bacteriological testing. We're waiting on the contractor to finalize the as-built drawings so we can put it in for DEP clearance. Once that happens, we get the clearance from DEP, we can then start moving water services over to the new main from the old main. Once that happens, then the process will be to go in and remove the older water mains where they are readily available. that would be, the primary reason would be to remove the asbestos cement pipe and tape it up, seal it up, and then transport it to the landfill for ultimate disposal. So that would be an ongoing process over the next month or so. Pine Ridge Park septic to sewer project, the grant has been executed. We will be, based upon board action this morning, trying to negotiate a final a scope of work and fee schedule with the #1 ranked firm. The surface water treatment plant, basically the storage tank, you have a nice little picture there. The tank is up. If you've driven down the road, the tank is up and painted. It's essentially done. And now we are working on all of the associated equipment. Now that the tank is built, we can work around it and build the new high service pump control building, the high service pump pad. We have run into one problem with some existing valves, large valves, 24-inch, that don't work as well as what we need them to do to be able to isolate the main for the tie-in of this new storage tank to our distribution system. So we are working through that and working with the contractor to come up with a change and see, because this is a change, added work, there could be it'll either fall within the contingency line item we have in the budget, which will not require a change order, but if the contingency line item, what we have, is not enough money, then we would have to bring back a change order to the OUA board for consideration, because we would be changing the contract price and time. So that is an ongoing project. We are working through it. But for the sake of this project, it probably won't be the only little hiccup that we run into. But it is a significant one because of the idea that we're dealing with 24-inch valves and piping, and that can be pretty expensive.
Tom, what caused that? Was it in the design or in the construction? Or do you know?
It's really neither. And the reason why I say that is because these 24-inch valves were existing, and it's real hard to isolate them to make sure they can close all the way, to completely seal off a pipe so that they can cut the pipe and tie into it. It wasn't until we got ready to cut the pipe that we were able to cut some plugs into it. Mm-hmm. And then once we isolated the system to see if it went down to zero pressure and flow so that they could easily cut the pipe and tie in, it wasn't until we did that that we determined that these bigger valves, maybe the seats have worn out in them through time since they got installed 30, 40 years ago. They close most of the way by turns. You think it's closed, but when you actually tried to cut the ports into the pipe, you understood that maybe the valve face was eroded slightly, and even though it was shut, it was leaking water by. Okay. And once we cut the pipe, and on a large pipe, if you have, I don't know, a small flow coming in, it makes the tying in process much harder to do, because now you're dealing with constant water coming in on you. And it would be better if the valves worked entirely and seated themselves and they didn't leak water back into your job site.
Okay, thank you.
So, other than that, I mean, the project is moving right along. The storage tank, if you drive by, it's been painted. It looks very nice. Like I say, everything else is still trying to get to that. I think the date is around June. That we hope to be able to put the new tank into service, and then by the end of August they would have completed the demolition work on the 2 existing tanks, and the project would then be hopefully closed out and completed. So we're still moving right along. It's drive by, you'll be it makes everything else look smaller on that site now.
Yes, it does.
Can you get an aerial picture?
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Can you get an aerial picture just to make sure you haven't put welcome to Clewiston on the?
I thought to?
I will, but I will edit the shot once we give it to you.
Yeah, it's kind of, we can't see the top from here.
Trust me.
Okay.
Jamie just brought to my attention, if you haven't seen it, the Okeechobee Magazine is out right now, maybe a month ago. Very nice article in there about this project.
Good.
Last agenda, any items from the board?
I have something. I'd like to ask the board to please consider, how do I phrase this? We need to send somebody over to the Board of County Commissioners at one of their meetings to make a presentation on getting some enforcement help on the LDRs that are in place for mandatory hookup. It's been brought to our attention that we've got 16 or 17 people over in Whispering Pines that never hooked up, and that was a mandatory hookup area. I've been told by a person that lives over in Taylor Creek, we have infrastructure there. People are refusing to hook up, and they're just paying the minimum fees. The LDRs are the land development, what's the R for? Regulations.
Yes, there we go.
Are there. It's done for Palm Beach County. We just need some enforcement by the county to support us where we can get these people back, get these people online. And we've got Southwest section getting ready to come up. We got Pine Ridge Park coming up. We could potentially have R-Bar everywhere that falls under this LDR. So what I'm asking is if we could put a business plan together and have the board approve sending Steve or Carl or myself or somebody to make a presentation to the Board of County Commissioners, maybe we can get them to help us by enforcing this LDR.
Wait a minute. We had meetings with the county. They told us, it's recorded somewhere, that they would help us.
And they need a refresher, apparently.
Evidently, okay.
Well, and if I can, I would certainly step in here. Where the dilemma comes in, if the board, certainly from a staff perspective, if we prepare a financial analysis of how, say, the Southwest section, how do we repay it? How do we repay any loans that we get for that deal? We have to make assumptions that if there's 500 connections, that we're going to have 500 connections at the end of the project, assisting financially for the long term of the project. So from that standpoint, having folks not connecting and paying their full fair share for the monthly bills impacts the repayment of those loan proceeds. From the standpoint of the environment or water quality aspect, again, keeping septic tanks in use when central sewer is available obviously degrades the water quality in that immediate vicinity of the drain field. And that's unacceptable from the standpoint of making it into a surface water body, the blue-green algae aspect of where we're at with Lake Okeechobee and those nutrients.
Well, you know, there's a fairness aspect to that too. We pay the cost. Those that have it available are not paying. Everybody else is paying to have it available. And it's really not fair not to hook into it. That's not fair. That's not fair to the ratepayers that are using the system.
Well, that's why I recommend we have a business plan together with the data, the information, supply it ahead of time, get on their agenda, and go make a presentation as the professional group that we are. And we need some enforcement support and help us.
I would add to that, there are folks within the city that have the same process where sewer has been made available.
City, did you say?
In the city. Case in point would be the customer that was here today that had sewer available at some point in time to that parcel in the past, and they haven't connected. So I would suggest from a standpoint of staff to the OUA board, we will prepare some data sheets showing the number of connections that are available who have failed to connect in either the city or the county. And then we go
John,
forward.
does the city fall under the same land development regulation?
They have a different set, and I can provide those to you also.
I want to make sure.
I believe, I'd have to go back and look at this, but I'm not sure if the cities are as stringent as the counties. But I don't know that for a fact. I'll have to, I have them, I will bring it back and share that with the board. Sir?
I believe the city was mandatory, that if you had a septic tank, but you had the sewer line going in front of your home, that you had to close your tank up and hook up.
Again, I'll have to refresh my own memory as to what the city's land development regulations are. I just know I've recently seen the counties and refresh my memory, but I'll have to do that for the city also. I don't recall right now off the top of my head. I believe it's there, but let me look at it to make sure.
I would like to thank John for putting the beacon light up and working on top of the Buckhead Ridge water
Oh,
tower.
is it working?
I noticed it last night, yeah. He said,
Good.
hallelujah. It took, what did it take, 3 weeks?
Well, it took, we had them up on the tower 3 or 4 weeks ago. They were doing some repairs to it. And we told them at that time, we gave them the bulbs and said, while you're up there,
Yeah. Oh, and they
change
did.
out these bulbs. I believe they failed to do that. But we did get them back over there, and they said, okay, we'll change out the bulbs, but it's not the bulbs that's burned out. It's a problem down below. And I believe they had to fix the electric eye down below because it was not recognizing the dust dawn.
Oh, yeah.
So it was more of an electrical problem. But I'm glad it's back up.
That's like a night light for me. It's my beacon. I know I'm only half a mile from home.
Well, in the interim, did you see, I was up there with some flags. Did you see me wave?
That's good. Yeah, that would work.
Well,
Turning your cell phone on and off.
The wave.
I'm going to add to that. I think you and Jamie need to be complimented on the damage sustained by our property owner down there, the wind blowing the thing off the water tower.
I really wasn't going to go into that detail.
Jamie, I don't know whether you get credit or whether John does, but I'm proud of you getting that done.
The overflow pipe broke off and it hit a neighboring structure. And is that the one you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about.
And did some damage to their facility. And again, it was our issue, so we were able to fix it. Reach a successful agreement between us and the property owner.
Meeting adjourned.
Is the meeting adjourned?
Meeting adjourned.
Nancy, where my wife was?